afternoon. Glad to have you all here. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is Laci Prince from the Arkansas Air and Military Museum down in Fayetteville. We're so glad she's here, and welcome to the Rogers Public Library, Laci.
Thank you for having us. So hi guys, as she mentioned, I'm Laci. I'm from the Arkansas Air and Military Museum. I took over as director in 2020, which is like the worst time to take over a museum, right? So we've made a lot of changes. So if you have visited before and you haven't been maybe the last 10 years, be sure to swing by and check us out because we have changed significantly. As she mentioned, my name's Laci. I'm from Melbourne, Arkansas originally, which is just a little east of Hot Springs, if you know where that's at. And I graduated from Henderson State University in 2017. I was actually the first graduate of their museum studies program. So I was kind of like the guinea pig. It was kind of weird, but we got it done, and my teacher and I still stay really close contact because he uses my real world experiences in his classroom now. So I've been also happily married to my husband for the past 3 years. He's a pilot for Southwest Airlines. And the reason I bring him up in my little speeches is where I can plug our event center. He and I got married at the museum in 2021. People were like, oh, did you get married there because you worked there? And actually, no. He and I went on our first date there. And that's actually how I got my job. I complained about how something was misspelled in one of the exhibits, and they gave me a job 3 months later. So complaints do make you go places, I guess. Now I want to give you all a short little video here. This is kind of our commercial for the museum. It kind of gives you an overview of how the whole museum looks like if you haven't been before. We worked with Rock Hill Studios to produce this film, and I think it's pretty cool.
The collection started in 1986 with the Arkansas Air Museum and has kind of grown over the years to become the Arkansas Air and Military Museum. We've really worked on trying to build a culture around the museum, making people want this to be a community center for their family.
When I first came to this place, I was in awe of it. It wasn't the best it's ever been, but there was something here that I knew was special. And I believe it was the conviction, the commitment of this place to preserve the aviation military history of Arkansas. A lot of people wouldn't think that, I would guess, a Midwestern state would have that much history, but we do. One of the guys, he came from the Little Rock, Arkansas area. In World War II, he actually changed the war in the Pacific for us by using B-25s, not as bombers, but as fighters. And so that's a key part of Arkansas history. No one knows that, but we do, and we can tell that story.
My name's Laci Prince, and I began working here as the director in June of 2020. A lot of people moved to this area because of training on the C-130s. The big plane outside, as most people know it, that is kind of the crown jewel of our collection. It's also kind of Arkansas's military mascot.
My name's Gus Kuklinski. I'm a volunteer here at Arkansas Air and Military Museum and a former aeronautical engineer. We're presently sitting in our C-130H Hercules exhibit. I would call it pretty much the centerpiece of our museum. Its size and its complexity really put the wow in the kids. It's great to see, especially when they walk out the hangar door.
We've really shifted our focus on trying to make this a place that is more child-friendly. We want to build a place where guests want to bring their kids and say, hey, isn't this cool? We should talk about this more, and hopefully, generate a love of aviation in the future. And a lot of people like to say that general aviation's dead, but we get to see it being rebuilt here on a daily basis.
My name is Hallie Jo Cartwright, and I'm the curator and exhibit designer here at the Arkansas Air and Military Museum. We want to reach people of all ages and stages. Our focus is the children, our community, because the future of Arkansas, the future of America, rests in our youth. And so we want to touch their lives so that they can know our history, because that's incredibly important. We have to know our past in order to make a better future. The real deal about the Arkansas Air and Military Museum, I would say, is that we are very hands-on. As I noted earlier, our goal is to reach the children, the youth of Arkansas and America. And a lot of what they need to educate is to get hands-on with military history and with aviation history. So putting them in the cockpit of the C-130, whereas otherwise you would just get to see the outside of it or not get to touch it. Putting them inside a flying banana, one of the only flying bananas left in the world. That is what makes us stand out from places like the Smithsonian or other air museums across the country.
Probably the most unique thing about our museum is our white hangar. The white hangar was built in 1944 for the purpose of World War II training, and it's really a standalone piece that even if the museum wasn't here, it would still be a historical marker. It would still be a place that people wanted to come see.
My name is Richard McKinney. I've served on the board in the past. Right now, my position with the board is a parliamentarian to make sure they do everything the board needs to do correctly and volunteer. We look to use the main bay out here in the white hangar, which is the historical hangar. This was the first one built in 1942 by 6 guys. It took 18 months. It was a great labor of human effort to get this hangar built. So it is kind of the cornerstone of the museum.
Next year, we are really focusing on our summer camp. It's one of those things that you get to spend a whole week with a bunch of kids never met before, and they are having the time of their life. They are getting to they're getting to go fly airplanes, they're getting to meet a drill sergeant, they're getting to build an airplane. It's just a crazy thing to watch, kind of watch these core memories be built for some of these kids.
In 3 years, we look for a bit of expansion. We want to increase the square footage a little bit off the number 2 or number 3 building in the museum. Of course, that has to come through city approval. And so with their planning and their support, we hope to see expanded indoor square footage for displays and some further outdoor displays too.
In 5 years, I really hope to be the standout aviation military museum in Arkansas and be the place that sitting around the table at dinner, someone's gonna go, hey, we should run out to the Air Museum tomorrow. And you know, because I like to think I want us to be a household name where it's constantly a thought in somebody's back of somebody's head. Well, oh man, they had that new exhibit down at the Air Museum. We should run out there and go see it.
We would like to see more events down here. Laci Prince, the executive director, is doing an awesome job of bringing in events, and I'm talking about not just weddings, but car shows, fly-ins. During the summer, we're trying to get back to our airport days once a month where you do breakfast, invite people to come in and see new displays that we've put up. We look for expanded events and maybe a little bit of change up in the displays to keep things rotating and new to keep people coming back.
A friend of mine from college, he was already volunteering here, so he brought me over and we instantly started getting to work on several projects. We got almost all of their Jeeps running, slowly working on some of our aircraft and helicopters. If you don't have the money to donate, we do take cash donations, but you can also give your time. We do work on quite a few different vehicles. Basically, you'd be able to work on anything from 1942 up until 1990s. Depending on what it piques your interest, you could be working from artifacts all the way to mechanicals, if you prefer that.
So it just kind of tells you an overview and gives a good view of the museum, so I kind of can't take y'all there today. So our museum is around 3 acres large. We have a little over 3,000 artifacts in our collection now. And that's our mission, if anybody was interested. We were established in 1986 as the Arkansas Air Museum. Mayor Marilyn Johnson, she developed the idea during Arkansas's 150th birthday. I always tell people it was kind of weird how it popped up out of nowhere kind of thing. The main reason we are a museum is because this building that we're in is such a fire hazard, they can't rent it to anybody else. So we're very, very lucky, but it also keeps us up at night, if you can imagine. We joke with the fire department that we are the largest fire hazard in Fayetteville. So the building is completely made of wood. It's a beautiful venue to have a museum. In 2014 is when we became the Arkansas Air and Military Museum. Does anybody remember the Ozark Military Museum? So they used to be at Springdale, and before that they were actually in Siloam Springs. Due to some financial issues, we absorbed them after they moved next door to us, and so now we're the Arkansas Air and Military Museum. What's kind of fun about our museum is we are the only aviation museum in Arkansas. and we are the oldest military museum. The Ozark Military Museum was founded in 1958, making it the oldest air military museum in Arkansas. So pretty cool. It has changed names several times. It once upon a time used to be the Salem Springs World War II Museum, I think was the original name of it. So very different history on that. And then historic white hangar, as Rick kind of touched in the video, it was built in 1944 for the purpose of training the 305th College Training Detachment. They graduated a little over 150 students the entire time they had them. It was designed by Henry George. He was paid just $15,000 back in that day, which is around $260,000 a day for that design, which is kind of crazy to think about. So on here you notice it says formally dedicated in June of 28th of 1944. Would you like to guess what the last day it had actually operated as a military training facility? June 29th. It closed down the next day. We're not sure what that would actually cause that, but they did shut down the military training the next day. So building just kind of sat there for a few years, and eventually became the home of an airline that was based out of Fayetteville, Arkansas, called Scheduled Skyways. Locals call it Scareways. So if anybody can remember flying called Scareways. So I'm going to popular artifacts with y'all today. We'll start with the C-130 Hercules. Gus already kind of did a good overview of this aircraft. It was flown in our U.S. military from 1986 to 2019. It's funny, you get kids up in the cockpit, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so old. And it's like, not really, it's actually a pretty young airplane for airplanes. I like to remind people, most airliners you're riding on today were built in the 60s. So, kind of scary, right? It's the second longest used aircraft in the U.S. Air Force currently. This is kind of debated because the B-52 is still being used on the same airframe they did when they invented it. So we get a new C-130 about every 30 years, whereas the B-52 is the same airplane they built in the 50s. So kind of a different, interpretation there. Max takeoff weight is 175,000 pounds. The other day I had this little girl on my tour, and she was kind of being a smart aleck the entire time, and I like to play into that. And she asked me, how many 7-pound puppies could that aircraft hold? We did the math. I think it was like 72,000. So, in case you ever need to know. And then up here I had the world record. During the escape from Saigon, during the Vietnam War, the C-130 carried 375 people out. That was in one airplane. They think that around 74 children were in the cockpit. But if you'd like to ever see that aircraft, it's actually down in Little Rock on display there. So this one's signaling the War Pig. You can kind of tell from the little pig at the front of it. That's kind of why we had this aircraft. The guys down in Little Rock did not want this to go out to the boneyard, and so now it's here. And then it's very significant in Arkansas. If you did not know, we are the top training base in the entire world here in Arkansas for C-130s. We have more C-130s here in the state of Arkansas than anywhere else. If you are from another country, if you want to fly this aircraft, you have to come to Arkansas. So, kind of a pretty significant portion of Arkansas history there. Here's some more images of it. Kind of show you the size of it there. That's the cockpit. Here in a moment I have a photo of one of the new C-130s. We've moved past this version of it from the H to the J. So this is an older version. And that is the new J model. That's what you see flying around today. The big difference is, kind of show y'all. So you'll see this like round bomb looking thing. It's a fuel tank. The new J models do not have that. That's how you can tell the difference if you're just on the ground wondering what that is. And they also have the 6 blades versus the 4 blades. So this is my favorite artifact probably in the whole collection. And it's kind of odd because you're like, what the heck does lowball glasses have to do with history here? So these are Jack Adams lowball glasses. These were brought to us by a museum friend. A friend of ours down in Little Rock at one of the museums there. Her father had passed away, and she brought us all his artifacts. He had been a pilot for several years. And she goes, hey, do y'all know what these are? Because I don't. So we're like, oh, we'll look into it, but thank you. We took it in the collection. And it says aircraft sales. Well, next door to the museum, if you're in the market for an airplane, we got an airplane broker next door. And he's been an airplane broker since he was, I think, 19. So he's been around for a hot minute. To tell you, he was a airplane broker during the Bill Clinton governorship. So he's been around for a hot minute. So I walk in there and I said, "Hey, Mr. Darrell, who's Jack Adams?" And he, in his good Southern accent, he's from Helena, Arkansas, goes, "Well, heck, I hadn't thought about him in years." And so he then goes on to tell me about Jack Adams and his lovely story of being an airplane broker. So Jack Adams originally was from Little Rock, Arkansas. He was best friends with another important aviation character. Anybody know who Fred Smith is? Founder of FedEx. They went to high school together. They would sneak out of the second story of Central High in Little Rock to run up to the airport and wash airplanes to pay for their flight training. Obviously, Fred went on to make FedEx, and Jack went on to be a Delta Airlines pilot, original Delta Airlines. When I say original, I mean when they were based in Baton Rouge, not Atlanta. So you can kind of see his cute little uniform there. He flew for them for about 20 years, actually. If you don't know, the pilot and aviation industry has not always been so lucrative. Typically, these guys were making maybe minimum wage, maybe a little higher if they were lucky. There was an influx of pilots after the war, so I didn't have to pay them a whole lot. A lot of these guys would actually go teach at colleges on the weekends to make ends meet, and that were work at fast food restaurants to make ends meet. So he kind of got tired of having to work all these extra jobs, and so he began his own way of airplane brokering. It's kind of weird to think about this guy being within our lifespans, being the first airplane broker, because you like to think that we've been selling and trading airplanes for years and years, right? He was the first one that ever did it. He actually would be flying over, say he's flying over Rogers, Arkansas. He'd call down to Rogers and be like, "Hey, anybody down there selling any airplanes?" They go, "Oh yeah, Jim Bob over here selling his J3 Cub." He's like, "All right, I'll be there Thursday to pick it up." As he flew over Little Rock, he'd call down Little Rock and go, "Hey, anybody down there looking for a J3 Cub?" And then they'd go, "Oh yeah, Billy Bob wants one." And he would go pick up that airplane and transport it to Billy Bob, making him the first airplane broker ever. So, kind of interesting way to get into it, I guess. He eventually kind of got in trouble for doing that with Delta because he was on their clock doing it. But he would go on to be one of the largest airplane brokers in the U.S., starting the Jack Adams Company. So, what's funny is I am a lifelong Arkansan. My husband is a lifelong Arkansan. And he's from Little Rock where all this was happening, we thought. It's funny, I had to dig really deep to find out more information on this guy. He's like one of these weird hidden dudes in Arkansas history. I finally got a hold of his son, who's still living in Memphis. And turns out he lived in Little Rock, he did most of his business in Mississippi. So they eventually moved out to Mississippi and started this company. And he started the Twinkletown Airport. That's an adorable name, isn't it? So, I don't have any photos of it, unfortunately, other than that one photo I just showed y'all. This right here is where the hangar used to be. It is now a trucking company. So, the hangar doors would have been on those tracks right there. I asked his son, what the heck's with this paint? His dad would get a wild hair occasionally and just paint the floors. And that was just kind of something he did. So you can still see what the paint is. The guy who owns this property now was very much like, "Why are you here?" The whole time I was like taking pictures. He finally had to walk across the property and be like, "You need something?" It's in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, by the way. And another cool thing about him in his weird, kind of obscure career is Elvis Presley is somehow related to this dude. Not by family relations, obviously, but before the Circle G Ranch was the Circle G Ranch, it was the Twinkletown Ranch. One day, him and his son were working in the yard and heard some ruckus down by the highway. And so they piled up on their horses. They rode down to the highway, and this man and his bride get out of this limousine. And it was Elvis Presley and his new bride. And he offered him a little over $300,000 to purchase the property for him. They moved out that weekend. So kind of a weird roundabout story about this dude. There's him, and that's where the cross is, the same pond that the cross is in, with his amphibious cart and the dog. So, very eccentric guy. So here is our Lair 23. This is a very interesting story about two different dudes doing two different, really different things. The second owner is pretty famous here in the area. His name is Bobby Yonkin. Anybody ring any bells for anybody? So you worked at Drake, so you know. So Bobby was a famous aircraft pilot from Salem Springs. This was one of his airshow planes. The Lair 23 was the first really good corporate airplane we had in the world. And he decided, you know what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to make it do a flip, which this airplane's not supposed to do, which is so fun. So it has a short range of 1,800 miles, top speed of 561, and it was the 7th one ever produced with a max takeoff of 12,000 pounds. And it's the only Learjet in the world that can be flown single pilot. Why is that? Well, Mr. Bobby was doing some pretty wild stuff in it. At the time, he was the only person doing a show like this. He made sure it was single pilot because of the trips he was doing. He had to endanger anybody's lives. It's a very interesting show. I encourage you to go to YouTube and look up some of his shows. This is not the only airplane he performed in. It was the coolest one, I think, but not the only one he performed in. Again, this is supposed to be a corporate airplane, just like the things that the Waltons are flying today, and it was out here doing flips. So, as you can imagine, it put a lot of stress on the aircraft. And if you go visit our aircraft today, you can actually see the rippling in the body where he was stressing the metal that hard to do this. So, pretty cool video. I always encourage people, go look him up on YouTube. That's not even the coolest thing he ever did, really. I always warn people, though, his death video is on YouTube, so please be very, very careful when watching. Now, he did buy it from a public auction. He did do some testing in it for some aviation industry companies. But before he owned it, another pretty interesting dude owned it. It's a bigger picture of it, in case you're wondering. This guy, anybody recognize him? I don't expect you to, because they cast him as Tom Cruise in a movie. They probably should have cast John Goodman rather than Tom Cruise, but that is Mr. Barry Seal. If you wanted to watch a movie about it, it's called American Made. It's had Tom Cruise in it. This is probably my favorite story in the whole museum. I love telling this story because I'm from Malvern, which is about an hour east of Mena. So I grew up around these stories. But Mr. Barry Seal was from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He, much like Jack Adams, he was not being paid a lot to fly for TWA. He was tired of not being paid very much. So he goes, you know what? It's really easy to smuggle Cuban cigars. So he begins smuggling them. From here on out, I want you to put supposedly before every sentence I say, because we're not really sure what actually happened. You have his story, and you have the story the federal government gave us. We don't know. So it kind of depends on what you believe on that kind of front. But Barry gets caught by the CIA, and they say, hey man, we know you're smuggling cigars. You're either going to come work for us, or we're going to throw you in jail. Well, what would y'all do? I'm about to start taking pictures for the CIA because I'm not going to jail. So he begins flying over Central America taking pictures of the movements of the cartel. This is like pre-Iran-Contra, kind of give you a time period. He eventually gets caught by the cartel, and they pretty much look at him and go, hey dude, you're going to start running drugs for us, or we're going to kill you. Yeah, lots of ultimatums in this dude's life. So he begins running drugs. He's running a little over $22 million in cocaine a day. That's today's money, by the way. What people tend to forget in this guy's story, a lot of people like to see him as a Robin Hood. He was a human trafficker. He also trafficked guns. He was not a great guy. I like to remind people of that all the time. But he owned a Learjet after he got caught by the federal government. My favorite portion of his story that is true from the movie is that the CIA, the FBI, the DEA, and the Arkansas State Police all raided his hangar the same night. None of these people had talked. All they saw was men with guns running at him. So, kind of sketchy ordeal there. But they did catch him, and he was trying to save the police some time, right? He's like, hey guys, don't even book me. I'm going home tonight. They're like, no, we have you with the drugs and the guns in your hangar. Like, you're going to jail, dude. And he was pardoned that night. He went home. You might want to take a whack who pardoned him? Mr. Bill Clinton pardoned him. He went home that night. So you can see why there's a lot of conspiracy theories around this guy's life. I encourage you to read the book Smuggler's End. It was written by the CIA operative who worked his case. And he was tied into the University of Arkansas. He apparently used to teach here or something. Pretty cool though. But yeah, very interesting story. My two favorite stories about this time period of his life was one, did you know that he and Lee Harvey Oswald had the same flight instructor? You can see the conspiracy theories dancing over here, right? They actually were from the same small town outside of Baton Rouge. So much like I had the same math teacher as my mother, he had the same flight instructor as Lee Harvey Oswald. So that's number one. My other favorite story about him, that's kind of like a bad story, is that on his prom night, he got a little intoxicated and flew his airplane into his high school and crashed it with his prom date in it. They survived. But like I said, not a great dude, but we kind of idolize him in Hollywood because of his kind of valiant efforts against the government. So if you haven't checked the movie out, definitely check the movie out. I think it's a great watch. It's one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies. But after you watch it and you see his face and you see Tom Cruise, you're like, ooh, not the same dude. So my last guy we're going to talk about today is John P. McConnell. John P. is from Boonville, Arkansas. Anybody know where Boonville is? Middle of nowhere. John McConnell, he would start out in World War II as a fighter pilot and eventually go into the highest level of government he could possibly make in the military. He was one of the first four-star generals ever in the U.S. Air Force because he actually moved from U.S. Army Air Corps to Air Force when they had that switch. He was best friends with Richard Nixon. That's like one of my favorite things to tell people is we have a lot of photos of him and Richard Nixon like playing with his kids. So like all these like really private photos that like I feel like as a museum, like as a normal person, I'm like, I don't want to see, like this is kind of private. It's just them hanging out, but it's kind of weird. We obtained this collection in 2021. He had a museum in Boonville and it shut down unfortunately, and we obtained all 2,100 artifacts. In case you're wondering what that looks like in a U-Haul, 2 U-Hauls, the big ones. So it took us about 3 days to get transported from Boonville up here. But it was a really cool collection. It has some of the more bizarre artifacts I have ever curated in it, including a tiger skull just hanging out in there. That was cool. The University of Arkansas now has the tiger skull, in case you want to go check it out today. But he was pretty important in his time period. He won all those awards. Distinguished Service Medal in the Army, Distinguished Service Medal in the Air Force, Legion of Merit with 2 Oak Clusters, Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star Medal, Air Medal, Commander of the Order of the British Empire. That sounds cool, right? And then the Legion of Honor degree of Commandant, which that is like the French Medal of Honor, from what I understand. So kind of important. He also, when we took his collection over, he probably had 30 other awards from Thailand and other countries. He stayed most of his career in Asia. So he's a good portion of our museum just because of the mass amount of artifacts we have on him. Upcoming events, what everybody wants to know about. This month, being Black History Month, we actually have an exhibit on Black Flight. This was actually an exhibit built by a bunch of local school kids. This is through Jack and Jill of America. We've been really excited to partner with them. They have gotten some really cool access. One of their girls in the group, her great-granddad was actually a Tuskegee Airman. So she actually had some of his actual personal items in the collection. So, and then this weekend we have our Sweetheart Swing Dance. If you don't know how to dance, don't worry. We teach you. Not well, but we teach you. We can't fix that 2 left foot situation. We can show you how to do it though. The dance is $15 for non-members. We actually bring a real swing band in and a dance teacher. So we do try to teach you how to dance, I promise. I don't know how to dance still, but. Weekly we have coffee and conversation. This is just an open time for people to come hang out in the museum, get free coffee and conversation. We have Homefront Heroes Day coming up in May. This event is our newest event this year. It's going to actually have quite a few reenactors there explaining what women would have done during World War II. We even have a speaker coming to talk about women of the night that during World War II, what they did. So very interesting topics, to say the least, but it takes all kinds to kind to win the war, right? And in our big event this spring, March 22nd, 23rd, we have Warbirds, Wings, and Wheels. If you follow our social media, we typically have 2 events a year called Warbird Weekend and Wings and Wheels. This year we're comboing it, making one giant event. We have 4 World War II aircraft flying in for people to buy rides on, and we'll also have our typical car show at that event. And then lastly, my favorite event of the year, as you heard when I talked about in the video, Camp Drake. I love Camp Drake. It's my favorite thing we do all year. It's for 8 to 12-year-olds. They get to come out and learn how to fly. They actually do fly in real airplanes. We bring a real drill sergeant out that screams at them for an hour. The kids will love it. You'd be shocked how much the kids love it. But I do have a little video on that. Yeah, Camp Drake, like I said, it's a 3-day summer camp. The first day is aviation, the second day is engineering, and the last day is military. This year, I think our kid count, we have 70% of our camp already is returners. That's how much these kids like this camp. What they really think they like the most about it is it's a complete and total competition until the day it ends. They're always fighting for points. We kind of do it like Hogwarts. And get points taken away for being bad, points for being good, all that kind of stuff. But it's a really cool experience to even just come volunteer at if you're looking for volunteer stuff. These kids are hilarious. You think they're a hoot. One of them got the bad habit of calling my husband bro last year, which was interesting. So they're a hoot. We love having them out. This year we have 4 camps. It's every single week of June. So we've expanded every year by 1 camp. I think 4 will probably be my mental max. Though I love these kids, it can be a lot for 4 weeks straight. But yeah, the flying is everybody's favorite portion. The local flight schools actually help us out with that to help get the kids up. And then we work with the University of Arkansas's drill team, the military drill team, to do all the military stuff. So the kids love it. My favorite part this year was 2 years ago, our drill sergeant fell halfway through, and the kids only remember that. And so this one little girl walks up to him and goes, "You're the one that fell last year." He goes, "Really? You had to bring it up?" It was a really funny interaction. But yeah, it's fun to see these kids change and grow every year. This year we're actually having our first graduation ceremony because we actually have, I think, five 5 or 6 boys graduating out because they've been here since day one. So kind of sad, happy, all that. So my second favorite event of the year, Santa Drop. We kick Santa Claus out of an airplane once a year. This is a really cool event. We'll see about 900 people come to the museum that day to watch this. I hate to show you all their video, but it's just so cool to watch him jump, right? So I'll go ahead and play that for y'all. Conjunction with the Fayetteville Skydiver group. They do this for free for us every year. This year was kind of a sobering year. Our first Santa Claus unfortunately went on to hang out with the elves forever. So we had to find a new Santa Claus that would jump out of an airplane, which, fun fact, really hard to do. It's hard to find bigger guys that jump out of airplanes. So we did have this guy volunteer. Last year he was his first try at it, and he wore a stretchy beard, as one does. When he was landing, it got wrapped around his face and blinded him. So I'm out there like hiding him as he's getting his beard fixed. So this year he found a sticky beard so it wouldn't do that again. But our real Santa Claus, he rolls out and out of the hangar and gets the back seat with 30 for all the kids to hang out with. So it's a pretty fun event. It's a really fast event, but it's a lot of fun. So, any questions? For non-members, it's $200 for 3 days, and for members, it's $150. We also just had a brand new exhibit open up called These Final Hours. It's about the last 12 months of World War II, from the eyes of 9 different Arkansans. So one of them, his name, so you might know who this is, Max Pinkerton. He flew a Learjet for a local oil company, and he actually spent, I think, 2 years in a German POW camp, and we had everything he had during that. We even have a spoon from the camp. On top of that, his wife saved all the letters, so we almost have a day-by-day look at what his life was like in the POW camp. So in that exhibit, you can actually sit there and swipe through those letters and read them, if you can read cursive still. We got all of these young people coming in and they're like, what's this language? I'm like, it's just cursive, I'm sorry. So, so just the admission, it's $11 for adults, $10 for seniors. It's free for Korea, World War II, and atomic era veterans, and then kids are $6. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my contact information's over here. If you want to follow us on social media, I have it written up over there. And feel free to ask me any more questions. All right, well, thank you all for having me.
Well, thank you, Laci. You got some really cool stuff going on down there, and hopefully some of us can come down there and see what's going on. So, thank you all for coming. We do have the Sheepdog Impact Assistance Group coming next month to talk about what all they do, and so be sure to come back.